XRP and the mystery of $17.54 solved. Now you're wondering what that is. Well, you're going to have to watch. And we're going to get into the mix of things right here, right after a message about BTCC and the Decent Wallet. Real quick, here's the site, BTCC. You can scan this link. Look at this. This is money I made today. Do you see these percentage of returns? Look at that. Now here's from the other day. It's really easy. If you believe XRP is going to be greater than the price it is that you're looking at the moment on the site, then place a trade and wait. Then when it's worth more, cash it out. It's actually that simple. Scan the link, experiment inside using the demo account, and see for yourself that it's easy to make 100, 200, 500 extra dollars every single day. Yes, it's possible. I'm doing it, and I'm not bragging. I'm just saying this is something you can do. So I'm not giving investment advice, but check it out for yourself and see if it's something that you feel like would be a good thing for you. Also, check out the Decent Wallet. The recent debacle that happened with the XRPL network affected some wallets where it opened up a back door. It did not affect the Decent Wallet. The Decent Wallet is a very safe wallet. It's one of the safest, if not the safest, with the air gap technology and the fact that you have to couple the device with your phone and have a seed phrase that has multiple layers of security. Your assets will be safe. Go ahead and pick you one up. Tap the link that you see appearing at the top and go ahead and pick yourself one up. Thank you for looking at those. I know you probably didn't have a choice, but oftentimes we do set up where there's chapters and you can skip certain things. So, if you don't want to see the ads, sometimes you can skip those if you want to. But we do appreciate you watching, and we appreciate y'all's positive attitude surrounding all that. Well, so what is this that's going to move to $17.54 all by its lonesome? What would that be? Well, we're speculating, but it's not speculation without reality mixed into it. So we're going to go ahead and get started.
Everybody, we just kindly ask you to consider smashing that like if you haven't done so already. Obviously helps both channels. Let's jump into why you're here. First thing is going to come up on your screen is from Smoke once again, and he has something specific. Well, what is it? He mentions specifically how Circle and Stellar operate together, but now imagine all of this under the Ripple umbrella. It's major. Guys, we're fully aware that there's a lot of people covering this right now, but we want to expand upon it and, if anything, solve this mystery of $17.54. As we get into it, back to the screen, Smoke has some detailed information about this. So for one, let's start off with this. It says the example. In the example, it says cross-border remittances on and off ramps for cash and stable coins. For example, depositing USDC, that cash in. And we see, for example, MoneyGram, how it all comes together. I don't need to preach to the choir about MoneyGram. A lot of people cover this, myself included. So we get further into it. I want to point out this next part about the example of cross-border remittances on and off ramps for cash and stable coins. Well, again, you can kind of see how Stellar solves all this. And, I love Stellar. I'm still into Stellar. But whatever the case be, look at this. Example, cross-border remittances on and off ramps. And again, you see how Stellar is constantly part of that. Now, some of you guys are going to ask, obviously, about the whole thing of, is Circle separate from Stellar? And basically the answer is yes. But again, I just want to show you how this is all orchestrated. Cross-border remittance on and off ramps, cash and stable coins, part 4.4. Okay, so you understand the transaction layer, settlement layer, and I will read this bottom part. MoneyGram uses USDC for treasury movements, which provides real-time settlement and 24/7 access. Okay, so obviously that's a big thing to mention. Now, on a simple Grok, or I should say, actually this time is Google search, this is what came up, and it says approximately 28% of the stablecoin market is made up of USDC, while USDT holds a dominant 66% market share. This leaves the remaining 6% for other stablecoins like, for example, USDE and a few others. Okay, that's interesting. But when we get to this next part, well, what about RLUSD? Well, RLUSD, which we know is Ripple's stablecoin, currently occupies a very small fraction of the total stablecoin market. But RLUSD market capitalization is around roughly 316.9 million, very significantly under compared to, for example, some of these other ones. So RLUSD compared to USDC, huge difference, right? And again, you kind of have an idea about that. All right, we did mention USDT. USDT currently holds approximately 66%. And again, the second largest stablecoin is in fact USDC at 28%. All right, before we jump to this major part with summary from Will Fix and get some of his thoughts, because this is going to be a pretty quick video, I want to point out this, and that is basically the whole thing that Circle is in fact separate from Stellar, okay? But here's the conclusion. If Ripple acquisition of Circle attracts 4.1 trillion in annual liquidity, XRP's price could rise significantly due to increased demand for fees, bridging, DeFi, and speculative sentiment. I understand that this whole video is speculative, but it's fun. Estimated price impacts are as following. Conservatively speaking, 2.59%, or excuse me, 2.59 cents, $2.59, I should say, if only 20% of liquidity uses XRP. Moderate, they have it at 5.09, and that's at roughly if 50% of liquidity drives adoption, aligning with analyst targets. Optimistically speaking, if 80% of liquidity flows through the XRPL, fueled by, of course, bullish sentiment, you're hitting a price of about roughly $7.63 per XRP. And long term says 2027 to 2030, $8.77 to $17.54. That's how we came up with that. If Ripple captures 30 to 35% of a 1.6 trillion stable coin market with a potential for 20 to 30 in a bull market. Now, here's where I want us to have conversation about this. Let's come back for just a brief moment. So, the way I look at it is like this, Will. This is just based off of stable coins. Okay, stablecoin market. We know that Ripple XRP is going to do so many more bigger things, to say the least. The whole thing of Swift, like we point out numerous times, that in itself with a perfect storm, right? Again, very speculative, would mean that XRP would have an incredibly high price. We point this out in the thousands. But sometimes people just want some examples in regard to the recent news about this stable coin potential shift if Ripple corners the market with this. I think it's going to be major if they do. And you can see how much more liquidity would enter into Ripple. So for one, we already have RLUSD. Number two, we have USDC potentially if they get this deal done. And man, we talk about pairings. Pairings are the enablers of volume. And again, anybody's welcome to do a search on this. That would create lots of liquidity for Ripple. I think it's a major win. I don't know if they're going to settle with Circle. Might be much higher than 20 billion. But does the news come out next week? Is it next month? Is it going to be after regulations are passed? Where the case be, if they can pull this off, it's going to be major for Ripple XRP. Your thoughts, Mr. Will Fix?
Well, I was thinking while you were talking that, if the prices impacted significantly, well, it paid for itself, didn't it? If they're able to get 28% of the market, and then because from a report that I saw, USDC is not making a tremendous amount of money, in this venture, and they're talking about going public. So I had a couple thoughts. I thought, well, they don't have to buy it first. They could wait until after they go public and then do hostile takeover, 51%. And in their proposition to purchasing it, surely they've looked at the impact that it might have on XRP price. So it literally would end up being free at some point, as far as the increased value that it would add. The other thought is what's going to happen with Tether. Now, a lot of people are down on Tether, but if Tether was to go away, it would devastate the crypto markets. I mean, that would be horrible. And but if they wither away, then it would give room for RLUSD and or Circle to grow. Now, from what I understand, they cannot change the name of USDC. It's stuck that way. They can't just come in and say, okay, we're going to call it RLUSD now. So it would just remain as its separate product. And another thing I want to throw in there is, the failure of Luna was it lost its dollar peg because of it lost, the money that was backing it, or the money that they had in reserve. The reserve took a hit. A lot of people don't know, but the reason Tether doesn't want to comply is the MiCA rules require 60% of your assets to be in the banks. Tether doesn't want their money in the banks. Tether owns a tremendous amount of US treasuries. Okay, so that's not a bank, but it is bank, so to speak. But when you require the money to be in banks, what happens if the banks fail? Well, if you heard of the Dodd-Frank rule, the bank can then take over the deposits as to save the bank. So then you would have the failure of a stable coin because of the failure of a bank. So you'd have a chain reaction there. Now, if that was to happen, that would devastate the markets. But now look at where Tether would be. So one way that I look at this, I see that Tether being different is probably a good thing. We probably want Tether to stay around, let them run it their way and not be affiliated with the banks, so that we don't have a catastrophic failure of stable coins like the Luna debacle. Luna lost its peg because of the backing of the money, the amount of collateral that they had shifted, and if that happens, that would be horrible. Anyway, I've just thrown that in as extra. But as far as the impact on XRP, I can see they probably considered that, and that's why they consider probably purchasing as it's not going to hurt them; it's going to benefit them.
Be a massive benefit because obviously liquidity, volumes would, in my opinion, I mean, I think some of those estimates that even we saw there, moderately speaking, you see, 10%, some as high as 20 or 30% by was it 2030. It's very, very significant. It's a major win moving forward, to say the least. Now, in regard to Stellar, real quick, someone wanted to discuss is, for example, Stellar, even on documentation many years ago, you will see screenshots, you name it, where it mentions not Circle, but it will say Stellar USDC. Now we know that that infrastructure was Stellar. Okay, so back to what you just said earlier when I zoomed in on you, Will. You mentioned, for example, that you don't feel as though that there will be a name change. I would agree with you for the most part, kind of like 50-50 on that. Where I'm going with that is I think that if you had Stellar USDC, and of course, when Circle came into the mix of just calling it Circle USDC, technically speaking, that was somewhat of a name change, right? Whether it's official or not. You go from one documentation, again, fast forward to the present, clearly it's Circle USDC. I think all that's going to happen if they have the acquisition of this, as in Ripple, cornering the market, it would make sense. It would be called Ripple USDC. So then you would have Ripple USDC, and then you would have RL USDC. And I mean, my goodness. I mean, some people could say, hey, they're, creating a monopoly. But again, back to what you said earlier. Then there's, of course, Tether. But 28%, Was that the figure? I think it was. Let me double
Yes,
check.
sir. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, 28% of that stable coin market. Any way you want to dice it. I mean, again, back to what we saw at the end of that scenario. Let's just re-show this real quick for everybody. Yeah, long term, 2027 to 2030. Okay, because some of you guys don't like us mentioning 2030. Anywhere from 877 to 1754. Ripple captures 30 to 35%. I don't understand. It's the whole thing at if, but I think that's huge because that is just off this stable coin market. And again, everybody, this is not even counting some of the big echelons, your Swifts and whatnot, and your fire blocks, and it's just all of the above that we've researched. So I want to just get some of your closing thoughts before you wrap this up, Will.
Well, that's it. I think we've said everything to be said. I can't think of anything to add. And this is all speculation on if they were able to buy this stable coin, if they were able to buy USDC. But it's fun to speculate because what's going to happen if, and what's going to happen if not, But so the speculation's out there. It is a rumor that they've offered 20 billion. It's not been any kind of an official announcement. Some are saying they're not going to make a second offer. Some say they are. Well, we know they want it. So there could probably be a deal cut. And, it's not over until the fat lady sings. Even if they go ahead and offer USDC offers itself publicly, there still can be a hostile takeover. Not that we necessarily want it taken over, but if it's going to help XRP, I want them to do everything that helps XRP because I've got myself a bag of it.
Yeah, the way I look at it, I don't think it would be a hostile takeover either. I don't think it's going to be a jerk move by Ripple. I totally don't see anything that would be too crazy where it's like, well, yeah, it's now Ripple, so all those contracts that Stellar had would be invalid. That's absurd. They wouldn't do that. That wouldn't make any sense. If anything, there's things literally written in the contracts to prevent some of those things and whatnot. It would just be simply, hey, Ripple, this is part of their, is Smoke pointed out, that's under the umbrella of their ecosystem and whatnot. And it would, of course, be a major, major win for Ripple moving forward. Hey, listen, everybody, if you appreciate this content, hopefully we earned your like. Consider subbing, especially if you're regular. And if you are a long term sub, we really do appreciate you. Thank you so much. If you listen to the entire outline, simply type this into the comments, and that is 17.54, and we'll know that you listened to the entire outline. On behalf of myself and my brother, Will Fix, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.